What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Get Over Yourself podcast. Today, I have my friend Bryce Hansen sitting next to me. We are continuing in the new lecture series where we interview young founders, specifically here within the BYU Sandbox program. Bryce is one of the co-founders of Devote, and we're going to be jumping a lot into this business today. It's been super successful for the past 2 years when it got founded, and he has quite the journey he wants to share with us today. But before we jump into it, I want you guys to get to know Bryce like I have over the past couple of years of Sandbox. So from a young age, Bryce had a passion for entrepreneurship and solving problems. This passion presented itself in many ways by selling treats and popsicles outside school, wedding rentals, a pizza business, which I definitely want to hit on here in a little bit, and more. He graduated from BYU with a BA in design and a minor in entrepreneurship. Having a love for the nonprofit space and having volunteered and worked for organizations, he found a problem that he couldn't be more happy to solve. The nonprofit financial processes are often fragmented and manual, handled by professionals or volunteers without formal financial training. This inefficiency costs hundreds of hours and thousands of dollars annually. Devote, his business, simplifies this by integrating the entire financial pathway into one easy-to-use solution, automating processes from donations to expenses, and eliminating the need for manual spreadsheets. Bryce, I appreciate you for joining us here today. I'm excited to do this entire series with Sandbox founders and other young entrepreneurs. That's the bulk of the audience here on the Get Over Yourself podcast. So we can dive into these nitty gritty details about what it means to be a young founder of an amazing startup like yours. I'm super excited to get into it. But guys, with that being said, let's jump into the episode. Thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, Brandon. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so tell me, you grew up here in the Utah space, is that right?
I did.
Okay. So what was it like? I feel like coming from an outsider's perspective, I grew up in Southern California, so not really the tech scene that you typically think of with Silicon Valley and, northern San Francisco area. And then I moved to Utah right after my LDS mission, and I get to this kind of tech atmosphere that seemingly boomed over the past 5 to 8 years. I feel like Utah wasn't known on the sphere as like a tech area, but you kind of grew up in this development. Tell me what it was like.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Up until about the last 10 years, definitely it wasn't known to be a tech hub. As I grew up, of course, there were big businesses that are constantly coming out of Utah Valley specifically, coming out of BYU, coming out of these universities. And I had entrepreneurial qualities. I never knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, though. And so I never really paid too much attention to these big businesses that are coming out. Didn't really care about them. Of course, they were cool, but it wasn't that big of a deal. But when it came down to it, I, of course, agree that it was growing and forming and starting to become something bigger than it was even 10 years ago. I also came home from my mission and wanted nothing to do with tech, especially after starting Sandbox. Tech kind of scared me. And when it started to boom and get bigger, it started to become inevitable that no matter what you do, no matter which career choice you choose, no matter what you study in school, you're probably going to end up working for some type of tech business. So that's how I ended up in one way or another learning a little bit more about the tech space.
Nice. Yeah. And I think your story fascinates me, just like I read there in your little bio. Obviously, I want to dive into a little bit more of who you are and why you ended up starting Devote. But you said from a very young age, you had an entrepreneurial drive. That's something I've noticed with other Sandbox founders, with other young entrepreneurs in general, is we all had sort of a random drive when we were younger to kind of earn our own money. And I've talked about this on the podcast before, but I remember I was working as a lifeguard back in high school. And then on days when I wasn't actually on one of my shifts, or maybe after I got off work, or on the weekends when I wasn't working, I had a buddy. He had old lawn care equipment. I had a beat up old pickup truck, and we just drive around our hometown, knock on people's doors, gave an awful sales pitch, and we'd be like, "Hey, we want to come cut your grass." And as awful as that sales pitch was, and as awkward as it was, because we're a bunch of high school students who have no idea how to do door-to-door sales or frame our business in a good way, we way undercharged our services. But at the end of the day, we started landing clients. And I remember the satisfaction I got from, compared to my lifeguarding job, where In the state of California, I worked for hours upon hours, and then the government took half of my funds, even though I
Yeah.
was a young high school student. I remember I'd open these paychecks every 2 weeks. My boss, she did the same way. It'd be like a little box, and everybody's checks would just be there in a little envelope. And so then, depending on how much you worked, everyone would be like shouting them out at the end of the day. They're like, "I got $800, I got $400, you know." And every time I'd just be like, "Dude, this sucks. I worked X amount of hours and only got paid this much because of taxes." And then I don't know, hopefully the IRS isn't listening, but as I went into business for myself, as we started before we officially understood the whole taxes behind everything, we just knock on somebody's door. They'd hand us $40, $20 each. We go mow their lawn for an hour, and life is great. And so I guess the point I'm trying to make is you had this drive when you were very young through the popsicles, this pizza business I want to talk about here in a second. But why do you think it is so many young founders recognize at a younger age, we're both young right now, but even a younger age, back in elementary, middle, high school, that they want to earn money for themselves? They want to kind of start a side hustle. Why do you think that is?
I think there's a couple factors that play into it. I mean, one of the biggest things that you'll always hear talking to any founders, any entrepreneurs, a big theme that constantly comes are people with ADD, ADHD. And I think coming along with those disorders, you have the overdrive in your brain or the attention to detail or the lack of attention span to be able to sit down, to have a desk job, to do these normal jobs that many people are really good at because you're always looking for that next big thing. You're always jumping from topic to topic. You're always jumping, trying to
Isn't that the truth?
scratch an itch in your head. And then once you scratch that itch, you're ready for the next
You're
big
on to the
thing.
next big thing. Yeah.
And I mean, from a young age, that's how I was. I didn't really want to go, even when I was in elementary school, I knew I didn't want to work for someone else. I don't want to have someone else as my boss. I want to work for myself. I want to make my own money. I want to set my own rules. And so, yeah, when I was like 8, buying a big cooler full of popsicles and other types of treats and gag toys and setting it up right outside of the school grounds so I couldn't get in trouble by the school. And hordes of kids would walk down the same sidewalk and I'd sell popsicles galore. And it was an easy way for me to make money at the time to pay for what I wanted to do at that time.
So let me ask you this. Is this kind of entrepreneurial drive? I think it is inherent in a lot of ways. Some people can adopt it, but I feel like the really, really young founders who go out there, and it's awkward as a kid. These are your classmates. These are people you see at recess. You could have been playing basketball with one of these kids earlier, and then all of a sudden you're trying to sell them a popsicle. Is this like an idea you came up with on your own? Did you have parents who kind of guided you in this direction of like, hey, maybe you should go out and try this? Because I feel like that's also a common trend. I come from a entrepreneurial family in a lot of aspects, not necessarily that they've all started businesses and grown and sold their companies and whatnot, but in the sense that we enjoy talking about business with one another and always bouncing ideas back and forth. Is that kind of the direction your family had, or is this completely your own thing?
No, it's a family trait. I mean, my oldest brother, sold many businesses throughout his entrepreneurial career. So it's something that is definitely within my family. When it came to like the popsicles, to answer that question specifically, it was actually a friend's dad who is also an entrepreneur who saw what me and my friends were doing. We were playing too much video games. He wanted to give us some type of job or chore to do at that time that was better. So he wanted us to go door to door selling things, but why work harder when you can work smarter? And so we found out that if we set up our stand outside of the school, we can do more than going door to door.
Okay.
And so I definitely do think it does come down to the influences around you as well, the environment that creates you, and just the drive to create and find solutions, I guess, and create whatever you need to in order to solve incredible problems that we deal with today.
Yeah. And it could be something as simple as a popsicle. Kid just got out of school. His mom gave him $1 for lunch or whatever it is. And he sees you guys at the end of the day. It's a hot summer day and he wants to go get a popsicle. And that's the solution you provided.
Exactly.
That gave him value, and that gave you obviously the monetary value that came with it.
Yes, sir.
It reminds me of the story. If you've read Rich Dad Poor Dad, everyone out there who's listening to this podcast, if you guys have read this book, Robert Kiyosaki, he goes into this journey of when his friend's dad, who was an entrepreneur, when he starts challenging him to start thinking outside the normal traditional thoughts that we may have when it comes to making money. don't go and just work a typical job, go and figure out your own ways to earn cash. And one way they ended up not doing this because it totally wouldn't work out, but they were trying to sell their old toothpaste to create, they would go around the neighborhood, they'd collect all the toothpaste, and then they would go and try and turn it into, I think it had nickel in it at the time or some kind of currency where they were going to try and print their own money. And at the end, obviously, you had to tell them, like, okay, no, you can't go and print your own money. That's what the US Mint is for. And had to explain that kind of legal discretion there. But the principle stands where he gave them kind of a direction and said, you have to go out, don't figure out this normal job. Don't go work at your local Arby's or Jack in the Box or Taco Bell or something like that. Go and figure out a different way to go earn money. And that's exactly what the kids did, Robert Kiyosaki, and he ended up obviously being very, very successful in his career, still is. And so I feel like this trend of young entrepreneurship, it does come from outside influences, friends, family members, people you go to church with, anything like that. But then you still have to put it in practices yourself. I've had plenty of nieces and nephews in my life where I try and tell them to, hey, go out and try this different experience. And they just kind of roll their eyes. Crazy Uncle Brandon's trying to get us to do something again. So I think in the same time as you have those influences, you have to have that internal drive. So what do you think is the internal drive that got you motivated at such a young age? And how do you continue it today and devote?
Yeah. I mean, I think for me, it's just trying to, I crave finding problems and solving them. It's just something that I've loved to do. I mean, word games, any type of Sudoku, number games, treasure hunts. I mean, these treasure hunts that they're doing in Utah all the time, I
I
love
could not
because,
solve it, dude. I
dude,
couldn't get it.
we were like 4 seconds behind. I'm not even kidding, getting one of them. And we were so mad. Me and my friends, we were right there, saw the people walking away with the treasure
No
chest,
way.
like just crazy stuff. That's what I love to do. And so when I see businesses, it's literally the same deal, the same problem where you find a problem and you're solving that problem. And I think it's more satisfying for me because I have my hands in it. I do the work. I create something. I'm the one actually creating the impact in that space. I'm the one that's actually solving that problem. Whereas the way that I saw it, if I go, and there's nothing wrong with working for other businesses, but for me, I never wanted to go work in the ranks of Adobe as a designer, helping them design a button on a single page
Mhm.
or not really having much impact overall on their product. That's where I found my strengths, I guess, when it came to solving these problems.
So, two questions off that. You graduated with a degree in design, which isn't amazingly common when it comes to starting a business right out of college. And then, secondly, you mentioned how business to you is almost like a puzzle. It's like Sudoku or a treasure hunt. I've never pictured it like that. To me, a treasure hunt, Sudoku, or any of these kind of puzzle games, even a puzzle itself, it's very, you're looking up on some kind of problem. You're looking at a poem or a clue, or looking at a big group of pieces that you have to put together to form the puzzle. And to me, a business, it doesn't even have structure to be able to be classified as a puzzle. Because in a puzzle, you have all the different pieces and you have to glue it together. But sometimes if I'm looking up at my business right now, I'm like, I don't even know what the pieces are. I don't even know where I'm supposed to begin this sort of task. So tell me a little bit why you graduated with a degree in design, and then explain this puzzle analogy a little bit.
Yeah. High school, I taught myself how to do graphic design, videography, photography. It's something that I loved. And I saw it as a way for me to make money while being my own boss. And so I did freelance everything. And when I came home from school, from my mission, I wanted to figure out exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't know, but I was like, maybe I can make my own graphic design firm. So still entrepreneurship, just a
Just kind
different
of a
type of
different realm of it,
entrepreneurship.
yeah.
And so I was in my graphic design classes. And I mean, the graphic design program at BYU is incredibly competitive. They only let 20 people in every calendar year, and they have over 200 applicants. And so it was a fight time after time to get in. And after not making it a couple of times, I ended up not really knowing what to do. But I had an incredible professor who picked me up and put me into the design rather than the graphic design. He put me into the design program, which is just as competitive, but he kind of just
Snuck you in there a little bit.
gave me a little push into the
Nice.
right direction. And that's how I ended up getting into Sandbox in the first place, was through that. And so I don't think I would have started Devote as early, or started a business of the scale of Devote this early, if it weren't for not making graphic design. And so I was devastated the first time I didn't make the program. didn't know what I needed to do. I wanted to apply again, but I had to wait. And so I had to take extra classes. And I ended up taking Entrepreneurship 101 with Corbin Church. And literally, I left that class flying every single day. Like I
As
had,
everyone does. This
I,
guy's a legend. His class just illuminates entrepreneurship into students who never even had an idea about it.
seriously. And like, I feel like I had an idea deep down, but I never knew it was that
Hmm.
deep. And man, I swear I left that class cheesing, running through BYU. I've never felt that way leaving a design class, leaving any other type of class. And so I was like, okay, this is something I definitely need to do. And I think Corbin Church could talk anyone into doing entrepreneurship. But that's how I ended up with the design background, but also doing entrepreneurship.
Isn't he a good salesman? He's the salesman where you're getting sold and you have no idea you're getting sold because it's a theory. It's an idea rather than like a physical, tangible product or anything like that.
Yep.
He implants something inside of your head, and then that itch you talked about earlier, you have to go and scratch it, or else it's just gonna drive you nuts.
Yep. No, it's true. And I mean, answering your other question,
Yeah. Talk about the puzzle.
which kind of goes into what you just said. It is all just a theory. So when it comes down to it, business, the reason I see it almost as this puzzle game that I'm able to solve is, I don't know, maybe this makes me seem like too much of a nerd. I feel like I'm a well-rounded person, but I love video games like Skyrim or Fallout, and I even physical games like Dungeons and Dragons. Sounds ridiculous, but the reason I love it is because you're able to take this world, take this problem and solve it using your own head, doing whatever you want, trial and error, and just figuring out what's the best way to get through a cave or what's the best way to get through this process. I feel like it's the same way, just like with the puzzle or with the treasure hunt, as business and starting a business, creating a business, because you're able to, even though you don't know the pieces, you don't know how they fit, all of the pieces exist. All of the pieces are out there to create a successful business. You just have to work hard
To
to
figure
find
out
those
whatever it is,
pieces.
yeah.
So it's the same with a treasure hunt where you may throw in 100 different guesses on what a clue or a code means, and 99 of them might be wrong. But then once you finally get that one that's right and you get to move on to the next step, that's the same way I feel with business. You're throwing on all of these pieces, all of these hypotheses, all of these guesses, testing. You find the one that works. You find the one that moves the needle. You find the one that starts to get things moving. And it feels so good. And I think that's how I equate that to a treasure hunt.
I love it. And so I think the reason why I've never really considered that analogy myself is we have two different entrepreneurial minds here. You're very like problem solver, look at the big picture, see how I can solve it in the day. And in my mindset, I've never really pictured it like that. I understand there's the different issues you have to solve. That's business 101. But in my head, I've always been just the kind of kid who just wants to win constantly. So business for me, it's not necessarily just the nitty gritty details, one step after another. It's the overall picture of, at the end of the day, I want to win. And my win in this case is growing an amazing business, being in the top 1% of these businesses. That's how the motivation that drives me in business. So it's interesting to see kind of the dichotomy between different versions. We still had that same kind of upbringing where we wanted to do something, we had this drive, but at the same time, everyone's why or their reasoning behind something is so completely different. But it doesn't matter, because as long as your why is good for you and my why is good for me, that's what motivates us to continue.
Yeah, and I think every individual, every entrepreneur at some point adopts a lot of different methods of
100%.
solving, and that's just the growth of an entrepreneur. Because I mean, don't get me wrong, I definitely am the same. I'm a very competitive guy. I love to win, and even to the point that we currently have a list of people that have doubted us that I like to call the naysayer
Oh,
list.
yeah.
That I use as motivation.
I love
I
that.
look at that and I'm like, I can't wait to prove you wrong. And it may not be the greatest motivation, but for me, it's motivation to win, just like you were talking about.
I love that. One of my favorite stories, Todd Peterson, founder of Vivint here in Utah, he had something similar where countless people told him this idea is never going to work. This whole door-to-door alarms and solar and everything, it's not going to work. And at the end of the day, when he was selling IPOing Vivint, he wore a shirt while he was IPOing it. And of like the top 5 people that basically told him no,
So
he's
cool.
good. He's good friends with them now. And it was like no disrespect, but he had their faces on his shirt. Everyone that was telling him no, these big name, big wig people that were like, this is never going to work. And he had it right on his shirt. And he was like, I just proved you wrong.
I love it.
I love your list there.
I love it.
One thing I want to hit, and then let's jump full into Devote here, is you mentioned you kind of had an interesting path to getting into Sandbox. You really, really, really wanted to get into the graphic design program for whatever reason. God's table that we just didn't understand at the time. It wasn't on the table. The cards weren't there. My wife and I were just talking about this last night, actually. She has stopped going to school for the past year and a half now. She's my full-time sugar mama. I love her to death because as I'm out here trying to create something with Interval, she's out there working her butt off so we can pay rent and eat food every month. And she took the sacrifice. At the time, she knew what she was doing and she understood it was a sacrifice, but she also wasn't sure what she was going to do in school. So she stops. And just a couple days ago, about a week ago, she's like, hey, I've been praying about it. I want to get your thoughts and opinions on this. She's going to go back to school and study elementary education. And if you know my wife, and I know you don't know her, but anyone out there on the podcast who knows her specifically, it's like the perfect gig for her. She, like, if you look at my wife, Bryn, she is an elementary school teacher. It's amazing. And one thing that we talked about is like, why on earth did she stop going to school right now when she could have been finished with her degree, and this year could have been her first year teaching, but in reality, she now has 2 more years of school because she took that long gap. And we just kind of sat back and analyzed it. And we're like, at the time, like if you didn't take the sacrifice, I don't think we would have been where we're at with Interval today. I don't know if we would have still been going because I probably would have had to been working another job on the side. I don't know. There's just all of these different life complications where we could sit back and be like, why didn't I get into the graphic design program? But then obviously God had a bigger picture for you where he put you in the design program, which got you into Sandbox, which got you working on Devote, which got you co-founders, which got you X, Y, and Z. And it'll just continue down this entire line that we don't even understand yet. So talk to us a little bit about that and how you think God's hand played a role inside of where you're at today.
100%. And I mean, I'm definitely a God-loving man. I love to think and see almost in the same way my entrepreneurial brain works. I love to look back and see every moment that I know wasn't just a coincidence, wasn't just luck, it was God. And every step throughout the way of me not making it the first time, taking Entrepreneurship 101, getting that fire ignited in me by Corbin Church, applying again, technically making it into the pre-program, taking those classes, applying for the actual program, getting denied. But before I even got denied that same day, I got a letter saying I was accepted to the design program, being so upset, saying that's not even the major. That's not even the major that I was trying for. What is going on here? Figuring out that I was put in the place where my professors at the time thought I would excel. And then having the opportunity to go straight into Sandbox. They told me at the time, like, oh yeah, most people usually take classes first for their first year and then they go into Sandbox for their senior year. And I didn't want to wait. I was excited. I was ready. Plus, honestly, being able to start a business and getting college credit for it seemed a lot more my style, more hands-on than old-fashioned learning.
Yep.
And so I jumped on the opportunity, got into Sandbox, and definitely even since then, every single moment, every single downfall, every single, I guess, high, I can tie it back to God in one way or another. I really do feel like what we're solving is so impactful, not only for the nonprofits, but the people that the nonprofits serve, that God in one way or another wants Devote to come to light, wants Devote to succeed, so that we through Devote can serve nonprofits who are serving so many people, not only in the US, but around the world.
So true. And maybe this is a very personal look on it. And obviously, we both want our businesses to succeed. I want your business to succeed. And sometimes I think it's very selfish to think God is going to be on my side while I'm working on Interval because I know what blessings it'll bring to businesses that we are helping with our software. And if you look on that from an outsider's view, a pessimist,
sounds ridiculous.
It sounds ridiculous. Not a God-fearing person. It sounds like the dumbest, most selfish thing ever. But if you can take yourself out of the equation and not look at the money behind it or the success, the worldly success, if you can say, at the end of the day, what I am working on right now is truly serving our customers. In our cases, we're helping businesses automate cash flow. These are businesses where if they get behind on their cash flow, they might have to let employees go. Their business might go under. So if we can help them earn the money that their business is owed, we're keeping a business afloat. And in your case, same thing. And we'll jump into this with the nonprofits, but you're helping them figure out all of their expenses. You're helping them track things that have been so tedious in the past, specifically for an industry with nonprofits specifically that is so time constrained. There's there's money flying all over the place. You're always constantly looking for outside help. You are solving an issue for them, which alleviates pain and stress. So, with that all being said, let's jump straight into the vote. We've got 24 minutes of great Bryce content now, young founder experience. But let's talk about the vote now. Tell us exactly what it is, why it's important, and why nonprofits have been adopting it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the easiest way for me to answer that question for you, Brandon, is to tell you why we started to vote in the first place. I come from a family that is in one way or another very nonprofit minded as well. So
Okay.
my dad, he's been a partner at Tanner, the accounting firm in downtown Salt Lake City, for a long time. He's spent his entire career there. So over 30 plus years working at the same accounting firm.
And from everyone outside the Utah area who's listening to this podcast, Tanner is very large. It's not a Deloitte or anything like that, but for the Utah atmosphere, it's very big.
Yeah, it's an awesome firm, and he's been there through the entire growth. And so his role there for a long time has always been over the nonprofit practice. So helping nonprofits, doing their audits, helping them with their tax forms, everything that the nonprofit has to do for their accounting. He's been the head of their practice. And so because of that, grew up knowing about the nonprofit space, going to events, fundraisers, galas. And then as I grew up, serving a humanitarian mission is volunteering for a nonprofit, going and working for nonprofits, volunteering for other nonprofits, seeing firsthand how much good they're able to do, but how inefficient they are at doing such simple tasks. And as we got into Sandbox, we are looking for an idea, figuring out something to do. We ended up stumbling across Divi, learning about Divi, learning about their business model. We had an incredible mentor that was in Sandbox at the time who then taught us about Brex and Ramp, who came after Divi, took what Divi did, verticalized it for a different vertical, and blew Divi out of the water. And we sat there thinking, man, why aren't more people doing this? And of course, now everyone's doing it. But 2 years ago, it was still on the earlier end of being able to do some type of card issuing platform attached to a software.
So tell us exactly, for anyone who doesn't know what Divi is, and you obviously did basically what they were doing for nonprofits. Tell us what Divi does.
Yeah. So what Divi does and what we do now is we issue corporate cards to nonprofits that allows them to attach it to a software, build controls directly into the cards, set up budgets so they can swap budgets before every expense just from the mobile app. And it just allows them to keep a better hold and control on all of their budgets, as well as expense reports are pretty much completely automated. So any of the transactional information they need, the receipts, memos, categories for their QuickBooks or whatever ERP system they're using, we're able to tally that up for them with the card. And it just allows them to sync that directly into their QuickBooks, getting rid of a bunch of manual, tedious work.
Tell us about the manual and tedious work. What were they doing before this solution existed?
So I'll give an example. I actually went, what day are we?
It's the 20th of August today.
Okay.
And I preface this, guys, as well. We are about a month out from these recordings, so we are recording a little bit earlier.
No, that's okay. I'm just about a week and a half ago, I went and I met with Utah AIDS Foundation. They were a referral from an accounting firm. We went and met with them. Their processes currently are they have what they call blue sheets. So every time they want to make an expenditure, they write down all of the information, why they're buying it, what class it's going to go into, how much it's going to be, where they're buying it from, all in a blue sheet of paper. They turn it into their accountant. The accountant then gives them the approval, gives it back to them. They make that purchase with one of the corporate credit cards that they don't have. They have to pretty much check it out.
Uh-huh.
They go make that purchase. They come back. They staple the receipt to the blue sheet. They give it to the accountant again to then approve it a second time.
Just
And
to
then
make sure the cost was pretty much what they predicted, or what?
a lot of times, I don't even think they know why they're doing it. Their accountant and their CFO that they had, their CFO actually just left, but they had their CFO for over 23 years. So it was a process she formed
And it just
23 years ago.
stuck, yeah.
And 23 years ago, without the technology we have today, that process makes sense.
Mhm.
But today, you can automate that entire sequence of passing papers back and forth into just building the controls into the card and giving those cards to the employees. And so then they have this room full of filing cabinets, full of blue sheets with receipts attached to them. So if they were ever to get audited, if they ever need to find a specific transaction, they have to go through a search month by month in these folders. And this is a decently large size nonprofit here in Utah. So you got to imagine what this large size nonprofit is able to do with their resources. Think of the 1.8 million nonprofits in the US that are doing similar processes, losing so much time, missing out on the innovation that exists today.
That's crazy. And I didn't even realize how many nonprofits there are here in the US. So your market size is absolutely enormous.
Yeah.
What have your customers said after they started using the product and give it say they used the product for 5 months and they started noticing the differences? What have been some of their feedback, and how did you use their feedback in the early days of Devote to kind of get where you are now? And what were the successes and the things maybe they disliked, and how did you innovate those?
That's a deep question. There's a lot we were able to use. So early on, when we first released Devote, we released in February of 2023. The product that we had then was definitely dog food.
As
So
all startups are
I
when
don't
you're
know
getting
if
out there.
they've explained that metaphor in Sandbox, but if you create a dog food, it doesn't have to be anything incredible. It can be the dry, gross dog food, but the dogs are still going to eat if it satisfies their needs.
Which is hunger in that case, yeah.
It's the same for business. And so we had this dry, gross dog food that was somewhat satisfying the needs of the nonprofits, enough to get 6, 7 nonprofits on using our product. That's all we needed, because then with those 6 or 7, we were able to
You validate
fine
it, grow it,
tune,
yep.
validate, create new features or new portions of the product, new integrations into the product that make it better for the nonprofit space. And with time, we've created the product that we have today, where now I just posted it on my LinkedIn yesterday, but out of the blue, get an email from one of our customers, absolutely loves the product, but it was her connecting me to a different nonprofit CEO. The paragraph that can I pull it
Yeah,
up?
pull it up. Let's hear the as long as she doesn't care that she's gonna be blasted out here. I'm sure she won't mind. What if you don't mind also, what's the nonprofit so people can go and support them?
So it's called Glamming the Warrior. They're out of New Jersey.
Okay.
They help with cancer patients, whether they are currently going through the cancer treatments or in the past are in remission, helping them feel beautiful
Okay.
again. So a lot of times they're losing hair. A lot of times they're having these surgeries to remove the tumors, and it can leave scars. It
Right.
can leave them not feeling super confident in themselves. And so she helps give them that confidence
awesome.
back again. But she ends up connecting me to John. And so out of the blue, we get this email, if it will load, which it will, because I have it here. And this is exactly what she says. John, I wanted to introduce you to Bryce Hansen, co-founder of Devote. Devote offers a comprehensive app designed to help nonprofits manage expenses efficiently with a range of features beyond what was available when I first signed up. Bryce can provide you with more details on these capabilities. Personally, I found Devote invaluable for budget management. It allows me to assign spending rights, process reimbursements, and maintain control over the budget all in one platform. This has significantly minimized errors and the risk of losing receipts.
That is awesome.
I got that and I almost cried.
Well, yeah, can you get a better email from a customer? It's like, we're hyping up your product and we're giving you a referral. Like, that is your validation. That is like what you want as a business owner.
Seriously. And I was so shocked. Not because I I know that what we have is incredible and it's changing the lives of these nonprofits, but that is like
That hits.
such good evidence that what we're building is really causing a difference in the lives of these nonprofits. And many times these nonprofits are under-serviced,
Yep.
so they have less employees than they'd like. They also have less training than they'd like. As far as in the financial realm, a lot of them don't have that formal education. So having a software that allows them to set something up that pretty much does it for them is a game changer for almost any nonprofit.
That is so awesome. I love that. And I'm so excited that as you continue in this journey, you're only going to have so many more emails like that. For everyone out there who's listening, if you want to get that same kind of good feeling inside of you where you just know you're building something that is actually valuable, there's no better feeling. We had an experience somewhat recently as well. One of our early customers, as we're still building out our products, this employee was just lighting up inside because she's like, this is like half my job. I don't have time to get done the other half most of the time because I'm sitting here taking phone calls and trying to actually get people to pay their balances, and our business is behind on the cash flow. So similar experience. It's awesome that you have it in writing form there that you can always go back and remember and just say, we are making a difference. And on those tough days of entrepreneurship, when you haven't landed a client in a while, when the software is down, you have bugs popping up, you just got told no for the 14th time in a row, these are the moments you have to remember, and those are the ones that keep you going. So Bryce, as we're getting close here to the finish of the episode, I want to hear specifically from you, being a young founder of Devote. What has been the process like? Tell us the difficulties, the struggles, the highs, the lows, and everything in between.
It's definitely a struggle. I think it's never easy to start a business. It doesn't matter what stage of life you're in. I think each stage of life has its pros and its cons of starting a business. Where we're at, we don't have to deal with a family that's really relying. I mean, you said your wife is the sugar mama. Uh, you find ways around it when you're young. You're used to being poor. You're not having to really pay or keep food on the table as much as if you're 20 years into your career with a family of
Yeah.
6. And so I feel like for me, it's been hard in ways that it would be different for someone who's older. But with specifically starting a business, I feel like Sandbox was an incredible way for me to learn how to start a business, and from there propelling into the future. So some of the hard parts that I feel like we've dealt with have just been from either bad decisions we've made or not being proactive enough in some areas. And I mean, just being completely transparent, when we started in Sandbox, we had 4 co-founders. Anyone who's listening to this, if you don't know, 4 co-founders is a very bad idea.
It's difficult.
And we have dealt with hard things. I mean, we are now down to 2 co-founders. The 2 co-founders that we've split ways with were friends, our friends. Like, we still love them. We're grateful for the work that they did on Devote and everything that we've been able to do, but it's hard. It's when people in the business world say, and getting an investor or getting a co-founder is like getting in bed with someone or getting married to someone. It's true. And those breakups, they hurt just as much as a real relationship hurts. And I mean, that's probably one of the hardest things that we've had to deal with internally at Devote, is just hard decisions that you have to make in order to make sure that the business will continue growing and actually has a chance. I mean, past that, some of the harder things are things that are completely out of our control. We're built on Stripe. Stripe is partnered with Evolve Bank. Evolve Bank's fraud center wasn't super good, as most people who are listening to this probably know. And if you don't, look up Evolve Bank and Trust, and you'll have plenty of news to go through over what's been going on over the past couple months.
Mm-hmm.
But we had a couple fraudulent accounts opened up through Devote using stolen identities. And it got through because the compliance process, not through us, but out of our hands, wasn't good enough. And the data breach as well through Evolve to I think it was 2.3 or 33, some crazy amount of terabytes of data that was released, customer data, personal information. and our customers all had their data leaked, had their social security numbers, their birth dates, addresses. So having to deal with that, just punch after punch. As a young founder or an old founder, you're constantly going to be dealing with things that are completely out of your control. I think the thing that sets a good founder apart from an excellent or an exceptional founder is how you react to the punches. If you're able to stand back up and keep moving forward, that's good. But if you're able to jump up and run forward, that's exceptional.
That's awesome. Last question I have for you today. Actually, two final questions. First off, is it seems like your product being for such a specific industry, and I feel like that industry, since it's built around helping people, the industry is very well connected, and they want even their competitors to succeed in some ways. They want everyone just to be happy, or whatever their nonprofit is focused on. They just want a better life for somebody. So, what does your process look like for going about and selling this product? How do you guys make your money specifically? And then I'll ask you my final question.
Yeah. I mean, keeping this somewhat short so I don't make us go too far over, we actually, up until about a month ago, didn't do any outbound. We have organizations using us from over 20 different states in the US. And from that, they've all been organic inbound leads through our website.
Wow.
So searching on Google, looking for a product or a solution, we
And
come
then
up in
boom,
the
you pop
top
up as number
5.
one.
I put a lot of effort into making sure our SEO content was good on our website very early on, and it's just paid off because we have, at one point, we were probably getting 1 to 2 leads organically through the website every single day.
That is awesome.
It's kind of dialed back a little bit, which is okay because now we're starting to do this outbound outreach, which has been good. But yeah, almost all of our customers have come either organically to our website or through referrals. So that network that you're talking about of nonprofits loving and hoping the best for others is going to play and is playing a big part in how Devote will disseminate amongst all the nonprofits in the US.
How do you make money with Devote right now?
Yeah, so we currently make money through 4 different ways. And so if an organization uses the entire platform, we didn't really get into this, but we now accept donations into the platform as well. So nonprofits can accept donations, have all the analytics they need, donor management, a high yield account where they can store their excess
That is so
funds,
awesome.
create interest there and more potential, and then the spend and expense program. If they're using all 3 portions of the product, we actually give it to them completely for free. We make our money through the transaction fees on the credit card. So the merchant ends up paying us for the nonprofit to use the product. There's about a 1% fee on the donations that on average, nationally, 87% of all donors end up covering the transaction fee. So the nonprofit doesn't end up covering it. And then we take just a minuscule cut off of the interest made on the high yield account. So if someone's using all 3 portions completely free, if they're using 1 or 2 portions of it, we do charge a $50 a month
Still so
SaaS
incredibly
fee,
cheap.
which is still hundreds of thousands of dollars cheaper than what other nonprofits are paying for the exact same
that's nuts.
solution. It's not the exact same solution because it's so outdated, but
I love it. Well, Bryce, I appreciate you for joining us here on the podcast today. My final question, this is how I wrap up every single episode here on the Get Over Yourself podcast. Aside from the whole business standpoint and everything going on that we've talked about today, if the entire world could listen to your message right now, if you could give the entire world just one piece of advice, what would it be and why?
it doesn't matter what you're doing. Luck is created, not happened upon. So the harder you work, the better you are at being persistent and have an incredible work ethic. It doesn't even matter if it's for your job. It doesn't matter if it's for relationships. It doesn't matter if it's for bowling league. If you're in bowling, the harder you work, the more likely you are to stumble upon luck. I believe that luck isn't found, it's created. And the harder that you work in any aspect of your life, you can find it.
That is awesome. I 100% agree. And I appreciate you once again for joining us here on today's episode of the Get Over Yourself podcast. Guys, if you know somebody in the nonprofit industry, make sure to go check out Devote's website, send it on over to them. Bryce will probably be one of the people talking to them immediately as the team is still continuing to grow. He has an amazing product, as you heard today. All of your customers just love you. They can't go on about you enough. And so if you know somebody in that space, obviously go check out the Devote website. Where can they find you specifically if they have any questions on LinkedIn or anything like that?
Yeah, LinkedIn.
What's your website?
Probably the easiest. My website is usedevote, U-S-E, devote, DEVOTE.com.
Perfect. I'll include all of that in the episode description, guys. If you want to go check out Bryce, his LinkedIn, his website, anything like that. If you know anybody, once again, please refer them. It's how we can continue to grow and help him grow at the same time. Likewise, if you enjoyed this conversation and you feel like somebody in your family, a friend, somebody in your local church congregation, your old sports coach, anybody in between would benefit from hearing today's words spoken, make sure to share it with them. You guys are my best form of marketing. That's how I continue to grow the show and can produce episodes every single week. So with that being said, we'll see you guys next week.